Hey there, Bruins fans. Welcome back to BNG Hockey, where it's always black and gold. The Bees have lost 5 games in a row, so you know what that means. It's time to trade everyone. But in all seriousness, the Bees should be looking to make a move pretty soon, and I would like to see it before trade deadline day. Sweeney's shown that he's not afraid to make moves, so let's look at a couple of guys that the Bruins are rumored to be interested in. Gonna start things off here with a forward from the New Jersey Devils. And it could be Taylor Hall, who looks like he's gonna be moved any minute now, but unfortunately I just don't think the Bruins can afford him. I don't think he would re-sign here, and I'm not paying all of that just to have Hall as a rental. But it does seem like the Bruins are interested in another forward from the Devils who I would love to have. It's right winger Kyle Palmieri. He's only 28 years old, right in the middle of his prime, signed for this year and next at a reasonable $4.65 million. I could see him fitting in really nicely here. He's kind of a sneaky 20 to 25 goal scorer. He could play with David Krejci and give him that shooting right winger that he's needed for a long time, or he could even slide up and play with Bergeron and Marchand. He's played with elite level players and looked good at it. So that gives Pasternak a chance to play with Krejci and DeBrusk, and then you have 2 solid lines. I like having a player who's not just a rental. That was a huge thing about getting Coyle last year. Not only did we have him for the playoff run, but we had him for this year, and it gave him an opportunity to fall in love with the team. Now he's from here, so it was probably a little bit easier, but you can negotiate with him, and now we have him long term. I'm not sure that Kyle Palmieri would be a long-term fit here, but if you wanted him to be, it gives you that much more time to negotiate. And our problem with having no right wingers isn't going to go away next year if a player just walks away to free agency. So I would like to see the Bruins go for a guy with some term. Palmieri is signed for a reasonable cap amount. I don't think we'd have to give up too much. The Devils would probably ask for Jake DeBrusk right off the bat, only because he does have term on his contract, and the Devils need a nice young piece who can still jump into the lineup and develop with guys like Hischier and Jack Hughes. I wouldn't do DeBrusk, but you can't blame the Devils for asking, so maybe they would go down to a Matt Grzelcyk, or even a prospect like a Trent Frederick and maybe a couple of picks. I'm not really sure, but absolutely Kyle Palmieri would be a nice fit on the right side for the Bruins. Next up is a player the Bruins have been scouting pretty heavily recently. It's forward Tyler Toffoli. He's 27 years old. In 32 games this season, he's scored 7 goals and 10 assists. Even dating back to last year's trade deadline, the Bruins have had interest in this guy. This Kings team is really bad, and they're looking to sell any day now. The Bruins have had scouts at their recent games, so it looks like talks are heating up there, or at least they're looking into players on the Kings, and it's definitely going to be Tyler Toffoli if they trade for someone. He's a natural right winger. He's got a good amount of speed. Still has some upside in the goal scoring category, I think. He plays with some elite level players like Kopitar and Doughty and hasn't really hit his ceiling, but if you play with players like Bergeron, Marchand, Krejci, DeBrusk, Pasternak, you're going to hit that ceiling pretty quickly. He would only be a rental, but maybe the Bruins want to re-sign him at only 27 years old. He's still fairly young, so he could still fit into their long-term and short-term plans. As far as what it would take to acquire him, I could totally see a player like Danton Heinen going the other way. That's a nice young winger for the Kings to build around. They're kind of trying to win now with Kopitar and Doughty, but also building for the future because they realize it's the end of their time. So Heinen would be a nice fit there. Same thing with like a Matt Grzelcyk. He's kind of a mid-range defenseman there. That would be a nice piece for them to acquire. Or, of course, they could ask for prospects and picks. There seems to be a bit of a logjam on the back end, too, so maybe you offer up a guy like John Moore along with a prospect and some picks just to kind of unload that extra defenseman and get a little bit of cap money going the right way. Just an idea. I'm not sure they would want a player like John Moore, but if you throw him into the right package, maybe you can find a way to get some relief on the back end and have a little less clutter. Lastly, we're going to talk about a local boy who always seems to be finding his way to the Boston Bruins. It's forward Chris Kreider of the New York Rangers. In 31 games, he has 7 goals and 10 assists. He's only 28 years old, and I think if the Bruins do acquire him, he will be part of their long-term plan, and they will definitely work to re-sign him. As far as what it would take to acquire him, I could see an Anders Bjork going the other way, or a prospect like a Lausanne. Maybe they would ask for a Trent Frederick. I'm not sure if the Bruins would want to give that kind of high-level prospect away, but I think they would figure something out like a normal rental price of a player and a pick. The only problem that there is he's normally a left winger, and we already have Marchand and DeBrusk. He could certainly move to right wing, or you move a guy like DeBrusk to right wing, or maybe you even play all three on the left side and have DeBrusk go down to the third line or Kreider go down to the third line for some nice depth, kind of like you did with Johansson and Coyle being your third line. But I think if you're going to acquire a guy like this, he needs to play in the top six. This is a perfect power forward that the Bruins desperately need. He can score, he can hit, he gets right in front of the net. This is a really nice player, and we know how we love to have the local guys, and the local guys like to stay here, so I would love to see them acquire Kreider and sign him long term. I think that would be really good for the Bees. Let me know what you think about these guys becoming Boston Bruins. If there's someone else you'd like to see, feel free to leave that down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big like, and if you haven't already, subscribe.